That's why I tell everyone all the time, like, dude, I was fucking felon, two-time felon by the time I was 16. I was fucking never went to high school, fucking GED, high school dropout, in and out of jail, gangs, drugs, etc. And I'm like, I started my own business. I left that. I started a different business. I run that. Started a publishing company. I get to do, it's like, you can do these things. You just gotta fucking work.
Welcome to Going In Blind. I'm your host, Zach Tidwell, and today I'm speaking with entrepreneur, writer, and internationally touring stand-up comedian, Deece Casillas. And to everyone at home, thank you for listening. Please take a second to help me grow the show so that I can keep delivering these conversations week after week for years to come. Subscribe, rate, and review the show in whatever podcasting app you're using right now, and check out the show notes to follow me on social media and YouTube as well. When you share your favorite episodes, tag me and use the hashtag GoingInBlind. You can also join my mailing list at zachtidwell.net. And if you know someone you think I should talk to, have them send me an email at contact.goinginblind@gmail.com. Deece Casillas, you are the first comedian on Going In Blind, so welcome to the show and thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me, man. Sorry, I was so listeners know, not that they need to know. This is we're They're listening in the future, but I was tardy to the party, so I thanks again for holding up for me.
It works out. I was just sitting here getting work done anyway, so it worked out. I don't have anything else going on tonight, but
Right on.
man, I I've been curious, so I'm a huge fan of comedy and have been for a long time, but I've never actually met a comedian, even though I'm meeting you virtually now. I've always been kind of blown away. I think entrepreneurs in general have huge balls, and I've talked about that on here before, but I feel like choosing to pursue comedy like you have is an extra layer, like an extra dose of balls that you have to have. Plus, you have to be a little bit, there's got to be a little crazy going on in there. Like, I feel like you guys, y- you boys and girls have to be some wild people. I feel like to even chase that, but also to succeed. And I feel like you didn't disappoint. I had that in mind. I was like, cool, I'm gonna have a comedian on, and then you sent me all your information about your background. And I had listened to your special and you'd like joked about going to jail in your special. And then when I read the stuff that you sent over, it said something about running it into trouble with the law. And I was like, all right, that's where we have to start. So give us some insight here. I want to know, you grew up in LA, which how old are you now?
I'm 42.
Okay. So you grew up in LA during a different time, and this wild boy probably started a little bit there. I want to know, I want the dirty deets on how you wound up going to jail and the whole background behind that. I know there was a lot of crime and definitely gang stuff going on in LA back then. Can you kind of walk us through that a little bit and then we can see where we go?
Well, first of all, Zach, I want to say it's nice of you to say go to jail singular. Um, that, uh, that, um, the reality is that rap sheet is much longer than a single line. Um,
Oh, we have time to go through it, man. So,
yeah, I
uh,
mean, uh, to be perfectly frank, I mean, I was a felon at 13, and
whoa.
I was um, in and out of jail until I was about 20, pretty consistently, with the longest time about a year. So,
That
mm,
is not what I was expecting when wow. I guess
yeah.
like you mentioned that you came from a big family. Was that kind of status quo in your family?
I mean, we are Latino, so there's statistically speaking. Uh, there, there's we're Mexicans have we put up good numbers in that department. I'd like to think, we're not LeBron, but we're close. Um,
In that area, I mean,
yes.
it's close to the border. Yeah, there's a lot of shenanigans going on there.
Um,
I was stationed on Camp Pendleton down south of LA,
okay.
so
Yeah. Yeah,
familiar
actually,
with the area.
yeah, I was spent a lot of time down there. My cousin was stationed on Pendleton for a long time, so
Okay.
but yeah, big Mexican family. I certainly had older cousins that were involved in gangs, which is how I kind of got involved in it. But also, I mean, I grew up in East Side Long Beach in the 80s, and all through South Central LA, which in the 80s, was a different time, man. It was height of gang violence. Like NWA. Listen to NWA's first album. Like that's
Yeah, it's that time period.
yeah, that's the time period and era I grew up in. So and I lived all through that area, and it at that time in height to get crack epidemic, gang violence, police violence, police brutality, all this stuff, Rampart District scandals, all these things. So, yeah, and to me, when you're a kid growing up in an area like that, you don't know the difference. Like you don't know that it's not like that in other places, really. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You just know your reality and what you live in. And I mean, I saw all kinds of crazy shit growing up. I mean, one of my best friends was shot and killed right in front of me. I was like 11, he was 13, I mean, that
Jesus.
was and you saw stuff like that all the time, and that's not the first time I've witnessed friends being killed, and certainly not it's happened plenty of times in my life, and you just see crazy shit, but it just seems normal because you don't know that there's like a reality outside of that.
Yeah, and that's why I asked that because I feel like you hear I think it's a lot more common to hear that where it's yeah, I grew up in an area where that's what life was. But every once in a while you do have the persons who's like, yeah, I had a phase as a kid and I was trouble. So but
Yeah,
and it's hard for me to imagine. I mean, I grew up very stereotypical, like middle class white household with my dad was in the military, so I had very strict parents growing
sure.
up, and I got into zero trouble because I was terrified of my parents. And I'm curious, especially because you were able to get out of that and remove yourself from that environment.
Yeah,
So
took me a while. It certainly took me almost a decade, but yeah.
was that a conscious decision or is that just kind of how things played out?
No, it was a conscious decision. So what happened is, we moved from LA to Western Montana when I was in my mid-teens, and, I think a lot of that was that my parents just wanted to get away from what was happening down there, after, like, the LA riots and all this stuff, like, they just wanted to get to a better chill place. And we moved to a town that didn't even have a single stoplight in this town, literally, didn't even have a stoplight in this town, how
It
small.
sounds like rural Montana. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Were your parents immigrants?
No, so my dad is, first generation.
Okay.
Um, yeah, my mom probably, I don't know, probably a third or something like that. But my grandparents on my dad's side, yeah, I mean, my this is not a joke. Again, I'm not hyperbole. In 1929, my grandfather rode a donkey from Hotepec, Mexico to America. Like that's a real fucking story.
Wow.
Which is crazy. Like if you told that to a kid these days, they're like, "What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
A
Did you
donkey
ever
from Mexico and just take an Uber?" You know?
did you ever meet him?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I grew up
Wow.
yeah, I mean, he died when I was, like, 10. Um, Kinda crazy. He actually had a heart attack and died on Thanksgiving one year. Um, but yeah.
It's like the one meal finally did him in.
Yeah, yeah. Too much chorizo. Uh, Got him, man. So, you know,
Yeah. So you guys are up in Montana now.
yeah, so we go to Montana, and I hated it, right? And I was just acting out, getting in more trouble. Literally, the first day went to school, like this is how small this school was. This school was first grade through seniors in high school, all at one school. So, like, there are different parts of the school where different kids go, but they was all attached, one big school, right? And the principal of the school told me my first week there, he goes, he made a point to find me and tell me, he goes, "Hey, you're just a worthless gangbanger from LA, and I'm gonna make it my goal to get you expelled from my school." Um, so, you know, I didn't
That's a fun, a fun
yeah,
conversation to have as a
but
teenager.
fun introduction to the school.
Yeah.
But like, and I already knew I was different, like I show up, this Latino kid. I'm the only one darker than Tom Petty in the entire fucking school. Um, you know, um, I'm wearing like Dickies and a flannel and shit, and everyone's in, Carhartts and Levi's and cowboy hats, and it was like it's crazy. It was like I'm like, oh, so this is where they were hiding all the white people. I had no idea. This
Probably super, super sheltered. Well, I mean, if they're from a really small town, like yeah, that's
it was
about as big of a transplant as you could have been.
Yeah, it was a crazy, crazy juxtaposition, crazy culture shock. And, so I start getting into trouble and I'm kind of getting shipped back and forth between family's house in California and back to Montana. And then, when I wasn't even 16 yet, and I just dipped out. I quit school. I was halfway through my eighth grade year. I quit school. I moved out of my parents' house and I just kind of did my own thing. Um, and made my bones through probably, things that may still statutes of limitations won't allow me to talk about completely. Um, but I figured it out, and then, it went through that for years, and eventually I moved back to Long Beach not permanently, for, like, permanently at the time, back there, and
Just by yourself.
yeah, well, one of my homeboys was, living back there. He moved back there, like, the year before. He had moved, to Northern California and moved back down there, and he's like, "Hey, man, come back to Long Beach, come, let's get a spot together." So, we do, and I was doing hip hop music at the time, and,
What?
yeah, yeah, and I got ki I used to it a lot, and then I moved there, and I kinda met some other people and got back into music there, and, the problem with it is that you kind of like the hip hop scene down there is so intrinsically tied to gang life, and they're kinda almost ubiquitous, one and the same, so I really was like I found myself back in this situation that I was kinda trying to get away from. um, Oddly enough, I moved back to Long Beach to get away from, you know, fucking gang life and being in trouble. But I kind of found myself back in the situation with the music. So, and then we were at a party one night and there was a shooting and one of my boys got shot. And that's when I really decided, I was just like, you know what? This is never going to change unless I really, really change. And I had to make a decision and I quit music. I quit talking to all those people. I moved out of Long Beach down to Orange County, um, to just kind of be away from it, but not, be out of the region. But be far enough away that, no one you're an unknown person at that point, And yeah, and I completely changed everything I did. I changed what I ate. I changed how I started exercising, working out every day. I'd literally run and run and run and run until I couldn't run anymore, and I'd be miles away from home, and I'm like, "Well, I gotta get back," and I would start walking back home, or run, jog, whatever I could. I changed the music I listened to. I started reading a lot of books on philosophy, Eastern philosophy, specifically like Taoism, um, and started meditating, and everything I could to change the norms I was doing.
Were you, I mean, that is such a drastic 180. Were you even an adult at that point?
Oh yeah, that by then I was 20. I was probably like 23 at that point.
Okay.
23, something like that. 24, maybe somewhere in there.
Still though, the awareness to make that shift on your own and just reach that point where you're like, hey, I'm fed up with this shit. I need to change is
Yeah,
that's very commendable, man. That's huge. And
it's
how you go ahead.
no, it's just one of those things where you realize, like, um, I am more in control of this than, um, people give themselves credit for, and you have the ability to change things that may not be comfortable. Excuse me, may not be comfortable. It may not be great. It may not be ideal at the moment, but long term, if you want things to change, and in the scenario I was in, if I wanted to live, if I wanted to live, I things had to change. So I'm like, this is what I got to do, And I'd been in and out of jail. I spent almost my entire year of my 20th year in jail. Uh, got out like a week before my 21st birthday, and that's when um, not long after that is when I moved back to California, and then I was there for a bit, then kind of crept back into this whole the shit started happening again, and that's when I'm like, dude, it's just I got to change. I got to make changes, otherwise this is just going to keep happening.
Yeah, and that's that what you said there is like it is a choice and we do have agency there. I talk about that a lot. And it drives me fucking nuts when people just bitch and I don't know. I feel like right now there's a trend of people using like a mental diagnosis
Oh,
for a reason to not
yeah.
be doing shit. I'm
A
like,
neurodivergent is like a fucking it's like a new TikTok.
yeah,
Jesus Christ.
yeah, it's the new whatever movement, and it's like, okay, cool, you have it, so figure out how to compensate for it. Like what? I don't know, man. That stuff drives me nuts, and that's I'm always like when I hear about someone who has a story where they've through a deliberate choice like that have made a shift. I'm like I want to talk to this person.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think agency is such a good word for it that you said there, because people really, especially today in today's day and age, it's so easy to be like, well, these extenuating external circumstances are happening, so that's why I'm this. That like XYZ plus B equals me. Instead of being like, well, yeah, that is happening, but I can choose what it equals, like for instance, so I quit drinking, doing drugs, doing anything 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago next month. Um, so I just gave it all up, cold turkey. I wasn't doing a ton of drugs anymore, but every now and then I would, if my main problem was I would fucking when I do on the road doing comedy, I start drinking and get too drunk, and then, people want to start doing lines, and I'm like, "Okay," you know?
Yeah, because you don't care at that point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like, "Yeah, let's go." So, but that was doing that, and I was drinking a ton, and I just decided to quit because career was going well. I just this trajectory, and I'm like, "I wanna try to do this." So, and I had some other friends who were getting sober at the time, and I'd go to AA with a couple of them, and I'm like, my problem with AA, in for anyone listening, if AA works for you, like, don't stop going. I'm not telling you to not go. I'm telling you to do what works for you to accomplish your end game. But for me, I just sat there, and they'd be like, people would talk, and they'd be like, you don't have to talk. And, someone would tell their story, and everyone was just telling this story of all the terrible things that happened to them. And then the end was like, and then that's why I did this shitty thing and am a piece of shit and drink. And and it was just like, okay. And then finally, like, so what about you, Diesel? And I'm like, I just, I made bad decisions. Like, no one, like shitty stuff happened to me, certainly through my life, but I don't blame that for the reason I drank. Still had agency in the choice to drink or not. Like I wanted to put the onus on me. And in AA, they tell you like you're always an alcoholic, you'll never recover, you're always at risk of relapsing. And I'm like, no, fuck
And
that.
the higher power is what's going to get you out of this.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, the higher power is you, man. It's like, I'm like, "Nah, fuck that. I can take it into my hands, and I can, you know, it's not this unbeatable thing." It's like, so there's no finish line? It's like, no, I can take control of it, master it, and then like, no, I'm good. I'm straight. I haven't had a drink in 6 years. It doesn't bother me. I'm out at clubs every night where people are drinking. I don't have for it like I'm good. And it's not this ever looming thing over my head like, oh, you could fucking s- s- sniff Listerine, and next thing you know, you're gonna be hammered plowing through a special needs school bus.
Yeah.
No, you're gonna you can be okay.
I think I think there's a couple things there with that. Like, and I was curious to ask you about that because it is, I mean, your work is centered around that. And it seemed, again, coming back to that, from the outside looking in, there definitely seems to be a culture there because you guys are wild people that would be a huge part. You're like, yes, you're around it, but that is also what all of your peers are doing. And hey, I'm
Yep.
gonna rip some shots before I go on stage or do some lines. And I think that to me, because my gosh, I'm what, I think about 16 months sober now. And to
Okay.
me, I think like being immersed in it like that seems like it would be harder. But also with like what you mentioned with people like in AA, because I tried AA too, and it's not my thing either. I wound up getting sober through my own accord after trying for several years. It just finally I figured out what worked for me. But I think part of that is people not having reached the point like in when they are talking about why they are drinking or whatever, and it's sometimes it is people are doing it with the self-awareness of explaining why it was happening and not making excuses. But when people are making excuses, I think it is like they haven't realized, okay, yes, again, back to the agency thing, like they haven't come full circle to the point where, because realizing that does require you to look in the mirror and make some uncomfortable assessments of yourself, that where
Yeah.
you're realizing, okay, yes, I did fuck up. Like, yes, those things happen to me, but I'm choosing to use that as a crutch, or and with that, then following through and developing the coping skills to fill in for what you are propping up with that addiction. But it's interesting that I think I mean, you're the first person I've had. I think because of my own story, comes up a lot on here. But I had a woman on recently named Mary Beth O'Connor, and she's the only other person that I've talked through in depth and with this. And she was shooting meth at 16 and eventually became a federal judge. And she's another person where he's gone on to accomplish some big things post, and I think who's had a more nuanced perspective on it like you have. I think the only other person where like we really dived into that. And it's nice to hear because I don't think that gets out there a lot, at least to the general population, that hey, there are other options there.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem is we live in a culture where no one wants to take responsibility for their actions and what they're doing. It's all extenuating circumstances of what happens around them, and that affects this. And like I said, that made me do this instead of just being like, no, I'm going to take control of my life around me. And, it doesn't matter what the politically is happening. It doesn't matter what, who's in office or this or that. You can just, hey, I'm gonna still pursue my life and what I wanna do. It's also scary though. I think that's the biggest thing. Is it like people are comfortable in their discomfort because they're aware of it and it makes sense to them because it's what they know.
It's familiar.
It's
Yep.
familiar, and oftentimes they don't even know it's uncomfortable, because it's been so they've that frog has been boiled for so long and so slowly that it just became, baseline, you know? They don't even realize what they're missing, and the scarier part is change and trying to alter it and, how will I deal with this and how will I feel like that? But I mean, I've always said that, um people defeat themselves so quickly because they like I remember growing up, I always heard like cigarettes was they used to say that cigarettes quitting cigarettes was harder than quitting heroin, you know? which is like a pretty crazy thing when you think about it. You know, you think about doing heroin, right? And heroin
Yeah.
addicts. So you're like, okay, so if someone wants to quit smoking cigarettes and they've heard that, their mind is immediately going to go, "Oh, you want to quit smoking cigarettes? Well, I heard it's harder than quitting heroin, and quitting heroin sounds pretty fucking hard. I've seen those addicted people, so
Yeah. So I'm
you'll
fucked.
never quit smoking cigarettes, and and then you're already defeated. You're already lost. You lost
Yeah.
even started. You know, so um, I think people just need to be more willing to just have long term vision and really think about what they want to do and what they want out of things, and they can do it too. Little grit goes a long way, baby.
That and I mean, getting back on the horse, like I mean, I seriously, I was trying to get sober for 2.5 years and I could not figure it the fuck out, dude. But
Sure.
like at some point, you can also be like, oh well, again, that like, okay, well, this is never gonna happen, so fuck it, I'm gonna stop trying. And
Yeah.
I think that probably gets a lot of people too. But sorry, I didn't want to drag you into that whole
No, it's
discussion
okay.
on it, but
I mean, it's one of those things where like congrats on the 16 months, by the way, man. I'll tell you what, it just like, it's one of those things like anything that it can be hard and it can be scary, but I'm a firm believer of fucking tracking your demons down and going to war with them. Because that's the only way you can grow and become invincible, you know. If you hide from them, they're still there, they're still watching, and they're still affecting you,
and
man.
they're gonna come back up if, even
Yeah.
if they're not, if they're sitting below the surface right now. You do.
Right. And but swim around in that darkness, get real uncomfortable, get familiar with it, master it, and then you can spend the rest of your life better off, way better off, like invincible almost. But people are just that's scary, and that's scary to them.
Well, that momentum carries, whether it's you starting a new gym routine or getting over an addiction, like that does that starts to snowball and build into bigger and bigger positives that do serve you in other areas of your life. And I think that's important to realize, like anything for whatever reason with the way human brains work, like getting started in those initial days are always the worst. And
Sure.
for
Yeah.
whatever reason, because we are adaptable, we figure it out. But
Well, and it also doesn't look it's not tangible in the moment, which people are in this instant gratification. They need like a currency that's attached to it or something that is attached to it, right? Whereas so much of this is like this non-tangible thing that it's just that you don't even really it's like a 1/100th of a percentage, that builds up, and then in a year, you're at like, "Oh, fucking my XP's gone up 3%," and you're like but you don't even notice that it's going up. You didn't notice when it hit 1 or 2, but you do notice when you hit 10, right? And you're like,
yeah,
"Oh, you know what? I do feel like I've slept better. I feel better." And like it's these little things and you have to give it time. And that's why I say like people don't have this long-term vision where they just want like it's now, tomorrow. What happens when I wake up tomorrow? How's it different? Well, probably fucking nothing, you know? But if you're just living for tomorrow, what are you doing? You look at what's happening long term, broad spectrum, and be willing to start putting in action things that'll make it better in a year, 5 years, 10 years. I mean, like there's an analogy of like if you have two ships sailing parallel to each other in the ocean, right? If one veers to the right just 1 degree, it seems nominal for the longest period of time, but eventually they're going to be end up in wildly different locations.
because it's exponential, and
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
that. Yeah, ventures like that are, and I think that short-sightedness is really its weakness, because that is a weak way to think, because again, it's that short term, and it then you have more excuses for yourself. I think that's really Uh, and maybe it's because of the content that I consume and the people that I associate with that I feel like people are more aware of that now, and then we might. I don't know, it's hard because when you like talking about the what we mentioned, like with people justifying their laziness or them not accomplishing things or their mediocrity with being neurodivergent or whatever it is, like I feel like people are starting to wake up to that a little bit, even though we do hear it so much. I think because those voices are, for whatever reason, get
Yep.
those
It's
little echo chambers are the ones that seem to get kind of propagate throughout for whatever reason because they
right.
play into the algorithms. But I think people are starting to wake up to that.
It seems like it. It seems like the like, for lack of a better term, normal people are starting to like see through the bullshit. Like it's like the Wizard of Oz, the curtain's been pulled back and people are like, oh, pay no attention. The man behind the curtain. And people are starting to realize that the the systems in place in our government, in our infrastructure are not what they're said to be. That there is a lot of like just more normalcy, kind of people trying to realize that they are kind of have to do things themselves a little bit, and that the polarization isn't necessary, and that there's not like this identity politics, and it's that uh, it's just it's crazy. Yeah, like you said though, the polar opposite sides are just get is what everyone pushes forward because they feed the algorithm best. So it's
Yeah.
what we think is the biggest thing, but you know, it's really it's really not. I think more people are far much closer to the center than they lead you to believe.
Yeah. And I believe that, but I do, since I dragged you up onto this soapbox with me, I want to give you a chance to get off of it because I have some other stuff that I really wanted to
Oh,
ask
sure,
you
yeah,
about.
whatever, yeah.
I I know at some point you, and I get this is kind of a two-part question because I know you mentioned starting a media business and then stepping away from it. But when I was looking into you, it looks like you either picked it back up or have kind of kept it going at least somewhat in the background, kind of like stoking the fire. So with that, I guess if you can clarify on which one of those happened, and then also like what again, dude, the balls to make the leap from okay, I've left everything I've known, kind of stumbled my way back to where now I know this path that I want to go on. Started my own business and I'm having success here, but I'm going to go chase this wild dream. I just the cojones, dude.
So let me this might a couple things might be getting crossed over so I'll try to clarify this on a timeline for you. So
Okay.
um I used to I kind of um I had my own company years ago in my kind of around the time I was leaving music and stuff like that. I started doing consulting, marketing, business development, and I kind of fell into like having my own company, doing this independent marketing thing. Um, and it worked. It was great financially. It was fantastic. Um, and I was it was it was great. Everything was good. And that's kind of maybe what you're thinking, the thing that I was doing that I left.
Yeah.
And around that time is also when I first did stand-up comedy. Um, and I did it at a bar that I used to go to and, hang out by my house in Long Beach, and they did an open mic on Tuesdays, and I would go down just to watch because I liked comedy. Um, and I hung at this bar anyway, so, two birds, one stone. So I'd go down and I would hang out. And I'd hang out and talk to the guy who ran the mic afterwards, and one day he's like, "Hey man," you're funny. He says, "Why don't you do this?" And I'm like, I don't know. I guess I never thought I didn't really think like I didn't know that was an option. Like I didn't know that these were just people off the street, like just signing up, right? Like anyone could just sign up. Um, so he's like, I'm going to sign you up next week and you're going to go up. And I'm like, okay. Um, so I went home and I've always been a writer. Like I always wanted to write. That was always my love. Ever since I could put pen to paper, all I did was write. I want to write books, screenplays, music. I mean, everything I wrote. And I looked in my all my notebooks and I realized I had a book of I used to write lines and in situations and things that I thought were funny that didn't really fit anywhere into something I was writing, but I would put them in this notebook because I'm
Like commentary almost?
yeah, yeah, just something to be like, "Oh, that's a funny line for someone to say." Like, I'll add that into, like, a book I write as, like, dialogue or something, or, like,
Uh-huh.
like, just things I thought were is in and I realized as I got a little older and I started doing more comedy, I'm like, "Oh, I had been writing comedy. I just didn't realize I was gonna be using it as stand-up comedy." Like, these were jokes. Like this is what I had been writing in this notebook. So I started doing comedy and kept doing mics and kept doing comedy stuff. And I had my company doing the marketing, and I'm like, okay. So and at the same time, I was also writing a book. I had written this book, and so I'm trying to get this book published, and like I'm like, okay, well, how can I get paid writing gigs? So I started looking into gigs that I could get that paid for writing, and I found these comedy writing gigs. I'm like, well, I can write, I can do comedy, so like I'll apply to these. So I started getting
Or
these
like
comedy writing gigs, so these like writing comedy articles for websites and stuff like that.
oh.
And doing like punch up for scripts and stuff like that, like little stuff and kind of started growing. And at a certain point, I literally like just said, fuck my job. I said, fuck this marketing thing, and which was insane because like I was making I'm for a kid for a fucking you know, a kid who didn't even go to high school one day in his life, was a felon at 13, was fucking, like all these things. I started a marketing company out of nothing with no degree and, was making six figures a year, had a house in California, had a house in Mexico. And like I ditched it all. And I'm like, I'm doing writing and comedy. I'm going to create this is what I've always wanted to do. So I started doing that, and then, I moved to Washington State, and I lived in Eastern Washington for a while, because the economy crashed in, like, '08. So, like,
Yeah.
I in '09, like, start of end of '08, '09, I moved, and I moved up to Washington because there were a couple clubs up there that I was starting to work for, and they were just opening a new club. So I'm like, "Oh, I'll be able to do stuff like, up there, I'll be able to work a lot. There are a lot of, rent's cheap, a lot of stage time, and so I went up there and started doing stuff, and then I started a, production company, which is probably what you're thinking of, the media thing I do now, which is The Social Hour. We're a production company, we do live comedy events at venues across the country. um We've produced a lot of sketch comedy. We've done, yeah, comedy, weekly comedy shows like on YouTube and stuff like that. We've produced
Yeah.
podcasts. Right now, we're pretty much just producing my podcast and a bunch of live stand-up comedy shows across the country. So I still run that. That was I think that kicked off in like 2012, I think is when I launched that. And then, so yeah, that's the production company that still runs. And then, yeah, I mean, I just started doing more stand up, doing more writing, and the writing kind of tapered off a bit. And I just did pretty much just stand up in the podcast for years. And in the last year, I've moved back to doing a little more writing and actually launched like a comic book series that I've always wanted to write. Um, and doing stand up and doing the comic book. So that's kind of the trajectory of the last like
Wow.
20 years approximately.
So it was more so you've always been a writer, and then comedy became the outlet for it, and that has now become what you do and love.
Yeah, I mean, I always loved comedy too. I just never knew how to harness writing as comedy. Like I wrote books and I injected comedy into it. I had ideas for like comedy shows, like sitcoms and stuff like that, but I had no clue on how to do stand-up comedy or where to even go, how to get started. It just didn't, like my idea of it was just these guys who were famous. And I'm like, well, they're famous. That's how they're getting this. I'm like,
Yeah.
I, I don't think I can just show up to the comedy store and be like, can I do an hour? Like fucking, so, I just had no frame of reference. So when, um, that guy who ran that open mic told me he's like, you're going to go up. I'm like, okay. And I did, and I was just like, "Oh, I can do this." And then you start meeting people like, "Oh, there's other of these, or I can do this at other places." And then, you meet people who book bar shows, and then they're like, "Hey, you want to do 5 minutes on this bar show?" And then you start building better and better material and get well known, and you travel to other areas doing it, hitting open mics and showcases. You network, and then those people are like, "Hey, I got a show. You want to come?" Do the show, I'll pay you $50 or whatever, and it just is like this thing that grows from there. So,
Wow.
uh
I've always like it with that guy telling you like, hey man, I'm going to sign you up next week. I get people telling me a lot like, oh man, you're funny. You should try stand up. You should try stand up. And like me, I tried one time to sit down and write, or I mean, it was like a couple week span where I was like, you know what? Screw it. Like I've always said, being witty in the moment and saying one-liners is way different than like, you know, what a comic does and actually
Sure.
piecing this art together in a structured way that where everything connects and they can call back to things later on. And dude, it was I mean, I still don't have any jokes because I can't I could not figure out how to actually write that out. And I'm curious, like you're going through life essentially scribbling down little notes that it sounds like were premises for jokes.
Mhm.
When you write now, I mean, do you sit down, do you set aside time and like I've been writing a book and working through the third draft of it now. You know, I set aside time in the morning to sit down and write and just work on the book. Are you doing that when you're writing out jokes? And I mean, your special's an hour long. Like,
Yeah. Not really, not when it comes to comedy, no, honestly, I don't. Some people do, and that works for them. Um, for me, and I probably should, to be honest with you, I probably more. It may help. It couldn't hurt, that's for sure. Because I mean, even comedy is like a numbers game too. So a lot of it's just throwing shit at the wall and um figuring stuff out and working stuff out. But like the reality is for me, the way my process for coming up with new comedy, um, I mean, if I I- is I take a lot of walks. I do solo walks and I don't bring earbuds. I just, absorb the sounds around me and I want my mind to process my thoughts. I don't want to be distracted, right? Um, or when I'm driving in between gigs, like if I'm on tour and I'm driving every day, like 3 to 5 hours a day, I like for a lot of that time, I won't listen to music. I just think. And I let my thoughts declutter. Because it's hard when you're very, very busy like I am, that it's hard to kind of let your mind be free enough to think of jokes sometimes. Um, so I let my mind declutter and I'll start talking to myself and just talking about whatever I'm thinking about. And, sometimes I start talking about something that I'm like, oh, that's a good idea for like this story, or that's a good idea for this book I'm working on, or that's good. But then a lot of times, like, oh, that's like I'll be like ranting to myself about whatever's frustrating me or something I saw in the news, and then I'll say something. I'm like, "Oh, that's funny. That's a funny take," and then I'll start trying to expand on that. Then I'll write it down, and then I'll start, expanding on it. Then I'll say it on stage and see if I can add a couple things when I'm, talking about it on stage in the moment. And that's how I do it. The sitting down and just writing thing doesn't really work for me. I mean, I've done that when I was writing comedy articles or, again, punching up scripts and stuff. I used to do like a weekly kind of satirical news thing, kind of like the Daily Show. And I would do like about 5 to 6 minutes every week. I did that during COVID because I wanted to keep writing and telling jokes. Um, so I did it then. Um, but again, it was kind of like all topical, just stuff that was for the week jokes. Those type of jokes
Yeah.
you can't really put into your set long term because it's stuff that was relevant like that week and maybe for another 9 days, and then it's gone.
People forget about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so, very little of that was I mean, a couple things maybe, but very little bit of it was tangible enough to where you can hang on to it for any length of time. So, um, yeah, writing stuff that's like and you write stuff that like, "Oh, that's funny. I can say that tonight because it's related to the Oscars," or whatever. The Academy Awards happen tonight. I have a joke about fucking Hollywood and pedophiles or something. But like, that it's relevant, but then you have to find a way to make, you can't unless you can keep it relevant in your set, it just kind of comes and goes.
Yeah, because you're working on that hour for
Mm.
however long to build up to doing a special.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly. So
was this one that just came out? Was this your first one?
it was, yeah.
Okay.
First thing I recorded. I mean, I've been doing comedy for 17 years. Um, and that one came out in, I guess, 2023. So it's been almost 2 years since that came out. About a year, I guess November of 2023, maybe. I'm trying to remember. So a year and a half, something a little over a year. What I can't do math. But so yeah, I mean, I'd been wanting to for a while, and I finally it came together in the way I wanted it to, and found a venue that I wanted to do it in, and the but that's the first one I recorded. And yeah, turned out good. I like it. I'm happy with it. Um, Mostly. There's a couple things, like a couple jokes afterwards that have gotten better where I'm like, fuck. You know, like a things, couple tags that I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah.
But most of that material I don't really do anymore, or try to
That's what I was
do.
gonna ask. Like, is that dead to you now, essentially, because it's out there for people?
It really depends on where I go. Because here's the one benefit of it is I'm not by any means a famous comedian. So, I can go somewhere and people have never heard of me or never seen me live, you know. So,
Okay.
even though that special is out there, they may not have ever heard any of that material. Now there's a lot of it I try not to do anymore. Sometimes I do none of it, but it's also I wanna do new material. You can get tired of material. Like, there's jokes that used to be bangers for me that one day I just realized, I'm like, "These jokes are not hitting anymore. Why is that?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm bored of them. I'm telling them, like, I don't give a shit." So, like, there's no way the audience is gonna give a shit if I'm not even invested in it?
That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Did I mean you've been doing it kind of basically along with the rise and through like the internet becoming huge, and it sounds like, again, I listen to a lot of podcasts because I'm blind. I mean, I pretty much have something going all day when I'm not
Yeah.
getting work done on my computer. So I there's a lot of the podcasts that I like are podcasts by comedians, and they talk about this rise of specials being released on YouTube, but also comics coming up and blowing up because of them having clips go viral when they're unknown and things like that. Has that totally changed the way that you kind of have to conduct your profession and your business as a comedian?
Um, yeah, I mean, yes and no. So, like, it definitely has changed so much, in the time I've been in it. Yeah, with exactly what you said, the rise of social media, clip culture, reels, and how that can, someone can catch fire, and it's a double-edged sword because a lot of these people who are catching fire off a clip don't
Talk
have a
to a
fucking
girl.
act. Like, they don't have their newer comics. They got like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. But then they're getting booked to headline clubs. And I'm like, it's like, great. They don't have an hour, they have 20 minutes.
Oh,
Um, so they're gonna give this audience a shitty show for most of the show. So you see a lot of these people who kind of are around, they do one rounds, they make it 1 year around the clubs, and then people realize, "Oh, this show sucks." And then, you know, that they kinda blew their shot. Um,
uh,
so I do feel fortunate that by the ride time that all had happened, I was established and I was, able to do the time and deliver an hour show. I can do I mean, I've got probably 2.5 hours of material I can pull from. So it's like, you've got yeah, if I were to blow pop on something, I've got the time. But it also, I kind of it's a weird position for some comedians because, for me, I do this full time. I don't have another job. I am a working comic. This is how I make my living. So obviously, um, getting bigger and having more exposure would be better, but also I'm not like desperate and being like, "Oh god, if I don't have a clip blow up, I won't get booked again." No one's ever gonna
yeah.
like, I'm already at that point where I'm booked regularly. Um, so I mean, it can always be better. Don't get me wrong, it can always be better. Um, but it's hard too because, you know, it's like, how much time do you wanna spend trying to game the algorithm, and how much time do you wanna spend doing comedy or just living your life, you know? Because
It's a fine line.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, in so many of these comics, I mean, God bless them for it, if that's what they want, I guess. I'm not sure it is necessarily, but they just spend, you know, it's hours and hours and hours a day trying to game the algorithm where it's like, I've got to get this video in the right format, just perfectly cropped with my face, but some of my body. And I also need subtitles. And then I have to have a good thumbnail with the right title.
And it
And then,
has to be
uh,
SEO and
yeah, I
yeah.
mean, and it's just, and I have to post it at the right time every day and with the right, like the right amount of hashtags, but not too many. But and you're like, and I have to change them every day and a little bit. And it's like, I don't know, man. I was just like, I can't spend that much time trying to. I just feel like my time is better spent doing other things.
And you're not gonna enjoy it if you're at that level of
Yeah,
just
I,
obsessiveness.
yeah, I just can't. I can't have. I mean, I don't have. That's not how I wanna spend my time. The returns isn't, enough for me to feel like that's how I wanna spend those days. So, um, God bless the younger comics who got the time and energy, I guess, and maybe a little more tech savvy and but it's just not that's not what I wanna do to how I wanna spend my entire day. I've got other stuff that I wanna do and enjoy, and it's like you know, a, a little more success would be great, but also I'm doing good. So.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like you have, 20 different things going on. Tell me about what's going on with this comic book. Are you illustrating it too?
So I wrote and created it. I do the covers for it, and I also do a lot of I do the panel breakdowns and like kind of layouts and stuff. But I have an artist named Felipe Sobriera. He's out of Brazil actually, who's super talented, who does all the like actual detail art and stuff like that. Um, just because he's way better than I am. And he's faster, and I just wouldn't have the time. And even if I did take the time, it wouldn't turn out the way he does it. He's incredible. Um, so yeah, I mean, I just contracted out. I there's a lot of Facebook groups for independent creators, and I just kind of put a post up there. I'm like, hey, I'm looking for an artist. This is kind of the style I'm looking for. This is the tone of the book. Send me your page rates and portfolios, and let's see what we can do. And ended up getting Felipe's, and we talked online. We went did a Zoom call and connected, and yeah, it's been great. I'm excited, really blessed to work with them. I'm excited to keep working with them as these projects grow.
And I was reading, I don't know if this was an old project. I don't know if this is the current project, but it's like a crime noir. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I would call it a neo noir crime thriller. Is what I would kind of quantify it as, but that's kind of a misleader. It's kind of misleading because the reality is it's a character piece about one man's personal journey of loss and trauma and the crazy things we do when we feel like we have nothing left to live for. Um, the idea is it's about a guy who wants to end his own life, so he decides to do it through vigilantism. Um, So he kinda, he hits the streets hoping that he'll just be taken out quickly. If any good happens in the interim, fine. If not, also fine. Um, and that's kind of the elevator pitch on it.
That's cool, man. That sounds. Are you done writing it?
Yeah, so it's been written for a while. It's a 10-issue series. It's
Jesus.
Yeah, it's been completely written for probably, I mean, a year or more. We're just really now it's just the time because Felipe has a actual job in advertising, so he has to find the time to do it. So it takes a couple months to get an issue done, and also it's expensive.
Seems like it would be. Yeah.
before I even go to print any copies of it, I'm about 4,000 bucks into an issue. Um,
Wow.
so it's not cheap. So it's just finding making sure the finances make sense at the right time and doing the in stuff like that. But yeah, it's been written. So we're trying to get an issue out every couple months. We're aiming for like every 3, 4 months right now. And then which honestly for what we're doing is great. There's a lot of indie comics that go years between issues.
Okay.
A guy that's been doing a comic book for like 10 years, he's got like 7 issues out. So, um,
Yeah. Fuck that pussy.
yeah, I know. Yeah. So I told him, like, sounds pretty gay. No, you should give up. No, um, I just, this is, I've always loved comic books. I always wanted to write comic books. It's one of the things I always wanted to do. And I've tried to over the years a million times. It's just never really worked out because it's always like you find an artist and you're like, they're okay. And you're like, hey, well, if we make any money, we'll split the money, which is no incentive for someone who's not really emotionally invested in the book. So I just decided I'm like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna find a legit artist. I'm gonna pay him his page rate. I'm gonna finance this thing and let's fucking go. I'll figure out the marketing. I'll figure out the distribution. I'll figure out the printing. And I did all that and it's growing. Um, we've had I have great feedback from the people who've read it. I mean, it's been out since I think the first issue came out in November, and we've probably sold, I mean, like 1,500 copies in the last couple months, which
That's a ton, dude. I mean, if people self-publish a book, they're lucky to sell that many in a lifetime.
yeah,
Like that's huge.
yeah, I mean, I've been hustling. I mean, I'm hitting stores. I think we're in like about a dozen stores now. I do direct to consumer. I do a ton of conventions. Um, so
Do you dress up like like your
Not yet,
character?
although I did find so there's like this mask I designed for the character. And I found a guy, I was doing a convention this weekend, this horror convention, and this guy who makes custom like Friday the 13th Jason masks, right? I was
Yeah.
talking to him. He just stopped by the booth. I'm talking to him. He tells me what he does. And I go, oh, that's dope. I go, oh, hey. And I point to my character in the book. I go, can you make that mask? And he goes, yeah, I could do that. And I go, oh, hell yeah. I go, yeah, give me your information. I'm gonna order like one of these masks, like a legit. I mean, these are like legit resin cast, like nice, thick, like professional looking things. So I'm gonna get one made to put on the table when I go to conventions.
That's so cool. And
Yeah,
just having that like tangible there is gonna be so cool. You
so
should
I figured it's gonna be like a cool thing to draw people in, look super professional. Um, and yeah, just add an extra layer of depth to what we're doing. So
yeah, and you could start doing sketches where like, you dress up like him. You have
there
a dominatrix stomp on your balls because you're
you go.
reckless and put
Yeah,
it on
put it on OnlyFans.
OnlyFans. Yeah,
There you
yeah. You really get multiple revenue streams coming in. What else? You got any other big projects that you're working on right now?
I mean, to be honest with you, it's really the comic book is the main thing because, and I'm trying to build. I started a publishing label, so Inferno Comics is my publishing company, and my book Kill Stan, uh, was the first thing we published, but I'm looking to publish more stuff. So I actually want to cultivate like a boutique studio of creators that are looking to do really interesting, unique, character-driven stories, and I want to help them publish their books. So that's I'm working on like an anthology right now to get to include like a couple different creators' stories and to get them some exposure, and then hopefully help launch some ongoing store stuff for them. I want to I've got another book I'm writing that I'm gonna do next. Um, and yeah, I mean, I just hope to grow the comic book label and keep being able to put out content for me and other people. Cause I mean, I I have probably, and this is like, I mean, I've got like, I don't know, 20 or more series is written, done, ready to go. And then like another probably 100 ideas that are anywhere between 10 to 80% done. So
That's so insane to me. When I hear people, I mean, you hear like fiction authors saying that where they're like, yeah, I've got 30 other book ideas that I'm working on. And I just, that mind, man, the mind that you have, that's
it doesn't stop,
so
man.
cool.
I've got so many ideas and things that I want to do. Um, And yeah, it's just like I'm just betting on myself and, investing in myself to make it happen. I mean, I get to live my life doing stand-up comedy, writing comic books, man. Like those are two of my favorite things in life. It's like that's what I get to do for a living. It's great. Um, and yeah, again, that's why I tell everyone all the time, like, dude, I was fucking felon, two-time felon by the time I was 16, I was fucking never went to high school, fucking GED, high school dropout, in and out of jail, gangs, drugs, etc., and I'm like, I started my own business. I left that. I started a different business. I run that. Started a publishing company. I get to do, it's like, you can do these things. You just gotta fucking work.
Grind.
So
Yeah. That's so cool, man. I'm happy for you. I think, and if you're looking for more people, I think I have someone. I met him like a year and a half ago who I might need to connect you with, who might be a potential like client for you. But um, very happy for you. And I just, there was so much as there always is with these conversations. I expected there to be some depth to this, but there was way more than I could have hoped for. And this was someone's gonna get something out of this. Someone else with a record or someone else who's not in the best living situation right now is gonna hear this and be like, okay, you know what? There's I can do something about this. And that's what this whole thing is about. And I want to thank you for being willing to share all of that stuff because I think that's another thing a lot of people I don't think you hear many felons out there telling people that they are felons. And you don't. I mean, you don't run into that a lot. And so can you just remind everyone where they can find you, everything, your special, where they can find Kill Stan and anything else that you want to plug?
yeah. So as for me, go to deececomedy.com. That's my website for my comedy stuff. I've got a podcast called The Social Hour. New episodes come out every Wednesday. We just got picked up by the Madness Entertainment Network, so you'll find us on all sorts of new platforms. We're going to have video content, video addition to the show, and in addition to just audio. So that'll be happening. You'll find us on pretty much every platform now. We're gonna be on YouTube and Rumble and X and everything, every live streaming on Facebook and Twitter. We're gonna be everywhere now. Instagram, all that stuff. So a bunch of other platforms I don't even know the names of, but so bigger, we're growing. We're gonna do more stuff with Madness Entertainment Network. We've got some cool things in the works that we want to do as far content and so we might see some new things popping up from the social hour of that network.
That's
But
exciting.
yeah, it's a cool opportunity. More people, more the show going in more places is cool. I'm happy about that. But yeah, it's come check that out. I've got live dates across the country. I'm somewhere always doing something. So if you want to see me near you and I'm not coming there, find a venue that wants to do comedy and I'll come. Or I do private events too. So holla at me. And if you go to my website, Deece Comedy, also, we do. Zach mentioned the special, "Not Your Cup of Tea." It is available on the website. If you go to the website, click the "Not Your Cup of Tea" link, and you can actually. Right now, we have a deal going where you can pay what you want, and you'll get a full download of the special. So, full 1 hour download of the video special. You can pay whatever you want. Most people pay like $200-300. But no, I'm kidding. You can. I mean, $5, $10, it doesn't matter. Whatever you want. You can even pay $1. It's a dick move, but you'll still get the special. Um, so check that out. And follow me at Deece.comedy on Instagram, Deece Casillas on Facebook, or the Social Hour Comedy on Facebook also. As for the comic book, you can find us at inferno.earth is the website. There's no .com, it's just .earth is the domain. Inferno.earth is our Instagram, Facebook, etc. We've got Kill Stand number 1 and number 2 are currently out. Number 3 is in the works. If you want to check out the book, we've got digital copies, we've got hard copies we can send you. We got multiple variants, all kinds of really cool covers we do. So they're on the website or on our Instagram. Follow us on the Instagram. That's the one we're most active on and where we try to post the most information, most up-to-date stuff, cool behind the scenes things and everything. And yeah, buy a copy. I think you'll love it, man. It's for everyone. I have a friend who's like a 45-year-old teacher who's never read a comic book in her life, and she read it and she's like, "Oh my God, I didn't know I like comic books apparently, because this is great." So it really is something I think anyone can get into and relate to. It's really about everyone's personal journey of struggle and the things we deal with and why we do the crazy things we do when we feel like we have nowhere else to turn. And that's something we've all felt. So I think you can get something out of it. But otherwise, just hit me up and I don't know. Let's play basketball. I don't know, whatever.
It'll be the closest, the nearest pink dot on Grinder.
Yeah. That's yeah, you're giving it away. You know, it's a pink dot.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. So that's all right. We're we're learning things, Zach.
Yes, sir. We're cultured here. So thanks again, man, and thanks everyone at home for listening to another episode of Going In Blind. Remember to rate and review the show wherever you listened. Follow us and share these episodes around because people need to hear these conversations.